Good evening, Sun Ra people. Welcome to Sun Ra Archive live stream. My name is Christopher. This is our 12th live stream. And tonight we're going to cover Sun Ra and Saturn in Chicago, Illinois, with our guest Brad Markus, who's going to be joining us at some point. I believe he's coming from a show that he'll tell us about. Brother Charles, hello. Welcome. We do a little housekeeping to start off tonight. Want to let everyone know that the Sun Ra Orchestra, under the direction of Marshall Allen, will be playing Tuesday, March 7th at 8 p.m. at TVI, New York City. The address for that is 1647 Weirfield Street, Ridgewood, New York, 11385. And tickets are available from the venue. I got this information here via Facebook. So I would imagine tickets are available online. Yep, there is a ticket link here. So go out and check out the Sun Ra Orchestra under the direction of Marshall Allen. And if you do, please report back and let us all know how it is. Let's see here. Check in on the chat. Brad, the link that I sent you the other day for StreamYard is the same one that you used to join us tonight. And just want to let you know, so coming up over the next 3 weeks, we've got our next 3 guests lined up. So on January 27th for live stream number 13, we're going to have a show called Designing Sun Ra with our guest John Hunt from Sundazed Modern Harmonic Records. John is the graphic designer who's doing all of the Sun Ra reissue artwork for Sundazed Modern Harmonic, and I look forward to that discussion about his process interpreting the Sun Ra aesthetic, his reflections on the Sun Ra and Saturn kind of visual aesthetic, as well as I'm hoping that we touch on the idea of AI and how it may or may not intersect with human beings creating art, as I believe it should be. John has been doing some research and work in that area, kind of exploring AI as a designer for conceptual work, seeing what it's all about, and kind of wading into that murky, deep, mysterious, and sometimes terrifying water that some other artists like myself are just haven't been ready to do. So I'm really interested to hear what John has to say about that. After that, February 3rd, live stream 14, we're going to have Roger Coleman and Sam Bird, the author and editor of the recent book Sun Ra Sundays, join us for a talk all things Sun Ra, and their book, their process, how it came to be, and the experience of listening to and kind of communicating their experience listening to all that Sun Ra music. And the week after that, on February 10th, live stream 15, we're going to have Jason Voss from Intergalactic Music Channel on YouTube join us for a discussion about collecting rare Sun Ra recordings, which should be really interesting. As a longtime collector and tape trader, CD trader, etc., I have a great love and belief in the importance of that topic, and Jason has kind of taken that to the next logical step digitally by utilizing YouTube and his channel Intergalactic Music to share the rare recordings of Sun Ra. So Jason's been a great supporter of the channel and doing great work on his own. So I'm very interested in speaking with him. And at any point, any of you out there want to join in, if these subjects sound interesting to you, shoot me a private message on Facebook. You're welcome to join. And if you have any ideas for shows or ideas for guests, people that you'd like to see us talk to or are friends with, by all means, send your suggestions, let them know about us, get in touch, and we'll keep this going. Charles asks about the timing of the show. 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Friday nights. Yeah, Charles, that's kind of what we've been doing for the past couple weeks. I understand it's super late for you, but we're finding our way, and this seems to be working right now. So, any of you that want to join in on a regular basis, that have suggestions for a better time that we can all commune and be getting together, please make suggestions. But yeah, Charles, unfortunately, I think for you and I, might be hard to find a time that works, that's going to work with our North American viewers, and predominantly everybody that's been joining in is kind of East Coast and the Midwest. So better equals earlier for you. Yeah, understood. I think the only opportunity would be to push it to when we all get out of work here in the US. So we can experiment. If you've got a suggestion, by all means. If not, as you say in the chat, omniverse time, we'll move our terrestrial YouTube broadcast to the psychic planes. So, Mr. Blast, good to see you. Thank you for everything that you do and have been doing all of this time. Your work on behalf of Sun Ra and bettering our condition and the planet. I wouldn't be here without you. So thank you for that. It looks like we got Brad here. Brad, calling Planet Brad. Calling Planet Brad.
Hey.
How you doing?
Galactic greetings. Sorry, I'm in the Starbucks, so there's going to be background noise. So.
All right.
Sun Ra says hello.
Very nice.
Put those sun symbols back up. That's my statement. Remember, he said in that university lecture, he said they took all the sun symbols down. That was the ancient civilization's power. Now they need to put those sun symbols right back up.
That's right. Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are joined on Sun Ra Archive this evening by Mr. Brad Markus. Joining us. Are you in Chicago tonight, Brad?
Yeah, I'm in Hyde Park. I'm actually close to where that Alton Abraham interview was made in 1993. It was made like down the street, 3 doors down at the Belois.
Excellent. I actually just reread that interview.
Oh, yeah.
Before I got online here.
That's good. I want to quote, maybe you can quote, there's the part where they're at the tree and the people start joking and all of a sudden that storm came out of nowhere.
Right.
Maybe
we will open that up and do a little reading.
There's a part of the interview is in this booklet, but they edited out parts that are important.
What's that booklet from, Brad, that you're holding up?
It's from the Strut Singles issue.
Oh, nice.
And it's got part of that same interview in there, but they edited out certain parts. So,
I'll have to revisit that. That's a fantastic collection.
Yeah, it is a great collection. Yeah.
So let's introduce you, to everybody that's either watching and in the chat or watching and not in the chat right now and watching later and in time to come. Mr. Brad Markus, um, I would describe as a Sun Ra and Chicago music historian and researcher. Is that appropriate, Brad? Anything you'd add to that?
Yes, it's like I'm trying to embody a part of Sun Ra's mission in my everyday life. I can't be Sun Ra, and I'm not Black American, but there's a certain spirituality. If you tune in, it happens. You can tune into what happened back then, or you can tune into the futuristic vision all at the same time. So.
Yeah, so
And Alton and Sun Ra both had visions about changing the planet to a better situation, especially back in the 50s for Black American. It was rough, and it still is. So they're like, we want to create something totally different for humanity, but it was also from a galactic standpoint for people all over the universe. And if the people on Earth aren't ready, how are they going to get visits from people from other planets? Sun Ra even said that in some of his interviews. If the aliens come here, they're going to try to arrest them. So why would they even, be bothered? We're not even ready. So these are some of the things that Sun Ra and Alton talked about back then. We're in the space age. We need to elevate our consciousness.
that's right. So in your day to day, like you just said, what's the one thing that you learned from Sun Ra and Alton and the music that you're reminded of every day that you try and embody in what you do and trying to make the planet a better place for not just you but all beings? Anything
I
that
like
sticks in
that
your mind?
question. Well, to try to coordinate different cultures, races, people, but to see their uniqueness. Also, it's not like a multicultural, like everybody's going to be the same. And to tune into the spirit and the ancestors of people. That's some of the things I think of. And to see how the music itself does the connections. Just hearing the music can tune you into those things. It can tune you into the culture, can tune you into ancient Egypt, it can tune you into outer space, it can tune you into dancing, having fun, rhythms. That's why Sun Ra called it the cosmos drama.
That's right. So how did you get turned on to Sun Ra? When was that? And
Yeah,
kind of like, what was your experience?
1977, I first heard Space is the Place, part 3 from the 3-part Blue Thumb song. And it was so different. I'm like, wow, this is like really talking about outer space and the whole that sound. It just, and then I got really fascinated. I got to hear all of Sun Ra. And then I would hear albums with regular big band charts. I'm like, what does this have to do with outer space? But I still was listening to it, and then I started to hear the more out albums. Mm-hmm. I'm like, whoa, this is really intensely different. And I would play it for people at my high school, and they'd be like, what the hell is that?
Yeah. So where did you hear Space is the Place? Was it on the radio? Did a friend turn you on to it? How did you hear that?
It was on FM radio, Northwestern University.
Was it a jazz show or a rock show or?
Yeah, it was jazz, but they played different types of jazz. They played a lot of fusion, whatever was popular in the 1970s, 77.
So what else were you listening to at the time?
Oh yeah, at that time I listened to a lot of soul music. In my earlier life, it was more pop, top 40, then soul music in the mid 70s. Then I branched into jazz fusion, and what they call prog rock, like Yes and Genesis.
Sure. Love it.
So that's what those are things I was listening to in the 70s. And in the 80s, I got into contemporary Christian and back to soul music. But all along, I would still listen to Sun Ra. In the 1980s, I started to go to the concerts as many times as I could. Whenever Sun Ra was in town, I would go see him. I was fascinated with hearing him talk. That was in 1982 or 84 or both.
Okay. So you first heard the music in 77 and you got a chance to go see them in 84. So after you heard Space is the Place, did you immediately go out and start trying to find the records, or did it take a little while to sink in?
No, I was buying the records regularly at Jazz Record Mart and some other places. So I bought a lot of the Saturns. I bought the Impulses. Most of them I had. And the albums, a lot of them would be $1.99. They'd be really cheap.
Wow. You still have them?
No. I got rid of the records in the 80s, but then ended up getting, in the last few years, CDs and what they call burn. I would have people burn CDs for me.
Yep. Yeah, Jazz Record Mart. You know, being an East Coast person, I've heard a lot about Jazz Record Mart back in the day being a great record store.
Yeah, they knew it. Oh, he's coming to buy Sun Ra, and that's what I was doing.
Nice.
And I remember this. There was Rose Records, and they had a whole giant collection of Sun Ra music, and then all of a sudden it was gone. And I think Pete Townsend from The Who had bought all those records at once.
Interesting.
Yeah, he talked about it once or twice in an interview.
Yes. Yeah, and I can't remember right now what interview that was. But yeah, he did talk about, Pete Townsend did talk about having a lot of Sun Ra records.
Yep.
Which is not surprising to me, knowing what I know about, about Pete and kind of his spiritual nature. And, his interest in keyboards and synthesis and stuff. That doesn't surprise me. Yeah, if anyone that's listening in the chat can remember what interview that was where Pete Townsend talked about should bookmark that.
Yeah, a lot of times I noticed this in the 1980s. It seemed like Sun Ra was trying to reach a worldwide appeal, and he would get giant stadiums in Europe sold out, but in the United States, the concert attendance oftentimes was very low, and he was kind of disappointed. But I feel like it broke a lot of racial barriers. There's a story about at the Nick in Birmingham. Outside of Birmingham, it was a real hip type of place, like country place. And the orchestra members were like, "Oh, we don't know what to expect." And then at the end of the concert, the people surrounded Sun Ra and said, "Love surrounds you in Alabama." They were so blown away by his sincerity of his music. They just we don't care about our racial stereotypes. For Sun Ra, he broke the stereotypes for a lot of people. That was in the late 80s.
Interesting. Yeah, I only had a chance to see Sun Ra in person once, because I came around a little bit later. But I always wonder and think about if he had a little bit more time on the planet, what the next evolution for him and his message would have been, as far as once we got things straightened out on the planet, what the next step in the vision was when we kind of vibrationally and more harmoniously who we'd be talking to and what the message would be. So you said 82, 84 would have been the first time you saw the band. Do you remember your first?
No, I remember 1982, but I didn't talk to Sun Ra that year. In 1984, I got to meet him, talk to him, listen to him, because he played 2 weeks at the Jazz Showcase at the Blackstone Hotel. And I went a few times, and I would mainly listen to him. I would try to talk a little, but I was mainly listening.
Any particular questions that you got to ask that you remember?
You mean, what did I ask him?
Yeah.
Yeah, I asked him, did he believe that Jesus died that we would be the righteousness of God? And he said, no man could be righteous. It's impossible. And he said a lot of stuff that I don't remember. And my friend Steve Gladman have some tapes of that time, but they're not very clear.
Yeah.
I can't hear what he's saying.
Right.
That was the only question I remember. I think I remember this. I asked him, he was talking about Jupiter, and I'm like, I said, it must have been really beautiful. And his face got real serious. He's like, yes. I'm like, oh, that shows that he really was there. He's not just telling a story. Because a lot of people think he was telling allegories, but the way his facial expression changed, I'm like, okay, I believe you were there. I always believed that he was there, but he did the travel to outer space more than once. There's the famous story where he was transported in the beam of light, but I believe he went other times also.
Yeah, at this point, I take anything that he said at face value for what it is.
I like that. Thank you. I appreciate that.
So 77, 82, 84, and then you and I kind of got introduced and started talking to each other, over the past year. And I know you really, in my mind, when I think of you, other than just a beautiful, gentle soul, I think of you as a researcher, as someone who's always studying and learning. At what point in your kind of Sun Ra journey did that start happening?
Well, I kind of focused on the real study in about 1998. I'm like, I want to meet people that knew him here in Chicago. So I would go to jazz music concerts and ask people, did you know Sun Ra and did you work with him? And a lot of people knew him or worked with him. Even if they weren't on the recordings, they knew him. So. And then when Alton Abraham's stuff started to surface through John Corbett, that's when I started to do the writing down research and going to see the archives.
So what can you tell us about that? So there are 3 archives that you're referring to that you've physically gone to, right?
Yeah, I mean, the main one was it was first revealed to the public in 2006 at the Hyde Park Arts Center. And then they had they transferred a lot of the paperwork into the University of Chicago Library, and the tapes were taken to the experimental sound studio where they were transferred by my friend Todd Carter. He did an amazing job. He said it took him a few years to transfer 600 or more reels of tapes. So.
And what's Todd's background? You said your friends, like, what's his background?
Yeah, he's a sound engineer and producer.
Okay.
Todd Carter. I mean, I can send you the links to he's got a studio that he records people. And he's usually engineer for people like George Freeman. Okay. George Freeman is Von Freeman's brother. He's a great guitarist. Mm-hmm. He actually remembers Von Freeman worked with Sun Ra, and George knew him. So they were always at the Pershing. Pershing Hotel had the ballroom upstairs where Ahmad Jamal played, and then they had the lounge downstairs, which ended up becoming Budland, where Sun Ra was in residency in 1956. And they played there other years too.
So did Todd tell you anything about the experience of transferring that collection and like anything that stood out, like as
I
far as
mean, mainly
research made?
about the tapes being real brittle. Sometimes you could only play them once, and then he would transfer them, and they weren't. They might still be in the collection, but they weren't playable after playing them once because they were very brittle. So, I mean, he probably mentioned some other things to me. There's also tapes from like Alton's. They're not where you can hear them publicly, but from Alton's answering machine. There's tapes like that, cassettes of other type of music that really had nothing to do with Sun Ra. Plus, there was stuff that other people that Alton produced, like Dimpna Claren, Lena McClin, Lacey Gibson. There's even Billy Mitchell had some songs of his own that are in that collection. And there might be other people that I can't think of right now.
So the sound recordings from Alton Abraham's collection are in the ESS
Yes.
archive. And
Yeah.
Steve Antonelli is asking if all of the tapes are transferred and fully documented, because they have a finding tool online, but a lot of the tapes basically just have a very rough sketch of what might be on them. Has there been more work on that?
Right. Well, I think they're in the process of updating the binding aid. Supposedly, it's been more researched, but it probably isn't posted online yet.
No.
Because I was at a ESS recently. Poet was speaking there, Marvin Tate, and I talked to somebody there, and they mentioned that it's been updated. I think Michael Anderson has the access to the tapes now, so he can fill in extra material from studio sessions, et cetera, that might be in that collection.
I hope so. I mean, no one knows the tapes better than Michael and can put together all the pieces. So
exactly, I'm very thankful for him. The story is that Sun Ra, when he was sick, told Michael, "Take these tapes. You'll know what to do with them." And I'm glad they did, because sometimes stuff disappears at the house. So, I guess there may have been more tapes that weren't salvaged, and there may be more tapes. Sun Ra said he hid things on purpose, and he kept them all over the United States.
Interesting.
He did it on purpose at that time. I heard him say that in interviews.
I wasn't aware of that.
So there might be tapes in other places. Probably not Birmingham, maybe. Wherever he lived, even in California, who knows?
So how much time roughly have you spent at ESS listening to the taped archives?
Not much. Twice. I've only been there twice to listen. So
okay.
I have a lot of more listening to do. That's something I kind of put on the side of the back burner.
Was there anything particular that you were looking for in those 2 times that you were there, or were you just
I really wanted to find stuff from the 1950s, and I didn't hear much in the collection. But John Corbett had some playing on a CD during the exhibit at Hyde Park Art Center. I think I have a couple short tapes of those songs. I'm guessing they're in the collection somewhere. So, like what's his name saying? He might be on some of the Eternal Myth tracks. Vernon Davis is a vocalist, and he was that's Miles Davis' brother.
Right.
I think he's doing that Pennies from Heaven. That's on Eternal Myth Revealed. I'm not sure though.
Yeah, I heard that, and I don't. It kind of blew my mind because I don't recall when Eternal Myth box set came out on Transparency that Vernon was identified in the liner notes as being the vocalist.
They didn't know, and I might not be right. I'm not sure.
Yep. I'm sure discoveries like that are just going to keep coming as the years go by.
Another thing I would advise people to listen to is the track 2 from the Hines Brothers' second Sun Ra research CD.
Yep.
It has some Sun Ra playing his tapes, and you can hear songs that have never been heard. There's one where it's a lady singing I want to be happy. I don't know who that is yet.
Yeah, those recordings that the Hines brothers made of Sun Ra playing his tapes and then pressing stop and fast forwarding and playing a couple seconds, they're both wonderful and maddening, because it's like you hear a little fragment of something and you just want to hear more.
Yep, it's true. I mean, there may be some more, but you know, they might not have recorded everything. And it's be interesting to find some of those same things in Michael's collection.
Yeah. So the second collection that you spend a lot of time, you've spent more time researching at in Chicago, is the paper and printed ephemera, correct? And is that at the University of Chicago?
Yes, it is. I've spent like from 2010 till last year, I was going regularly. Every other week, every week, it would vary. I have like piles of notes. I wrote out some sheet music. That was good. It's some good material there, and a lot of Alton Abraham's personal writings. There's like the first year of Saturn Records, there's like where they shipped records. He kept a lot of meticulous documentation about the label. There's so much. There's even like magazine. There's like 2 boxes full of articles from magazines, interviews.
So when you started going to the collection, and you said that you went like every week or every other week.
Yep.
Were you just kind of intuitively looking around and seeing what it said to you and where it led you, or did you have a specific project or agenda that you were trying to research and find things specifically for? Like, what was your mindset in your research?
All right. Well, it's kind of both. I just wanted to get more insight into what Alton was saying about Sun Ra and family stuff. I don't know. I don't think I really had a specific agenda.
Well, you actually just said that you wanted to see what Alton had to say about Sun Ra.
Yep. Yeah.
So I know that Alton Abraham, Saturn Research, and the Chicago connection of not just the musicians, but the kind of spiritual, cultural community around Sun Ra is really important and fascinating to you. So what did you learn in your research as far as Alton's viewpoint, of that time period and maybe his influence on it?
Well, they were both doing research on ancient culture, the Bible, connections to Helena Blavatsky, lost continents. There's a lot of lists of like words and equations. There's some equations maybe that were written by Alton, so it's hard to say who. I think they were both on the same page, and they just happened to meet. And there's other people that were involved too.
Right.
Some that we know and some that we probably don't know. But yeah, there's a lot of notes and equations and references to words. I didn't bring that stuff with me, but I have a lot of stuff written down and some photocopies of some of the things. So, a lot of contracts for concerts they did, like at the Sutherland or Budland. Some of that has been seen, like the tickets where it says out of space, Atonites.
Right.
Atonal, it could be Atonal or Aton, the sun god. Probably both. Means both.
So if you've seen Sun Ra's handwriting, and I've seen it mostly kind of in his scores, musical notation. His
Uh-huh.
Sun Ra's penmanship is very distinctive. So
Yes.
when you looked at the archives and all of the written records, did you see a lot of handwriting that originated from Sun Ra, or were there lots of different hands? And did you get a sense how much of it was actually notated by, Altman and what his penmanship looked like, so you could tell the difference?
Oh yeah, I could tell the difference. There's a lot of notebooks with Alton's handwriting. And there's one broadside, the one that talks about Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. You probably haven't seen that one. And there's a handwritten version, and then there's the typed versions. And the handwritten is in Alton's handwriting. There's a few things with Sun Ra's handwriting. There's a notebook with some of the, and it has some that has some more music titles that haven't been found yet. There's one called Otherwise. That would be a nice one to find. But there's more of Alton's handwriting, but there's some things with Sun Ra's handwriting too. And I think that there may be some things that Alton got from the Sun Ra house too, like some mail or different things. Not a lot, but a few things. And then there's this where Alton would send band members money from Western Union. And John Gilmore even mentioned that in one of his interviews. He's like, yeah, Alton helped us a lot over the years.
Yeah. Yeah. So the book that I'm holding is John Corbett's extended play.
Right.
And this includes 3 chapters that refer to Sun Ra, one about Sun Ra, and one that's entirely an interview with Alton Abraham. And both John Gilmore and Alton refer to Alton supporting the band, for many, many, many years after they departed from Chicago. So, but if any of you out there have not read this book, it's highly recommended. That Alton Abraham interview is the only one that I'm aware of. I go back to it every kind of few years, and was always really impressed by it, as far as understanding what Alton's involvement and influence on Sun Ra and Saturn was, and how pivotal he was to it. So Brad, knowing that Chicago is really important to you, and that's kind of part of your research, and that you're aware of and interested in the whole musical culture and the history of jazz in Chicago. What is, maybe your research in the archives kind of helped form your thoughts on this, but what are your thoughts about the city and that location, whether it's geographically or the culture, that you think kind of helped make that period possible for them in the 50s, of this like kind of super focused growth that Sun Ra and the orchestra went through? Any thoughts on that, the role that the city and the place plays in the music?
I feel like it was like it's a catalyst to birth things into being, because it's very difficult here. I feel it was real difficult at that time. It's still an energy. I mentioned Abriel Raz, a drummer who's played with Sun Ra in the 1980s. He said, yeah, the energy, this is like the center of the spiritual forces on earth. And it really brings forth creation, especially in creative music. You got to be pushed to do something you've never done. And that's what Sun Ra was kind of doing. So I think that's a part of it. It's a birthing process. I don't know. I think it's still happening in a way.
Can you repeat what you said? You said that Chicago is what as far as being a center of energy?
It's I forgot now what I said, but it creates a birthing process. It's a center of creative energy.
Right. So is there anything that you're aware of geographically as far as ley lines or anything like that in that area of the world that might contribute to that?
I honestly don't know. Not sure. Maybe there was some ancient. I used to think there was something in Lake Michigan, like a remnant of an ancient lost continent. It's buried under the water. But I know they found some real ancient coral there that was older than the rock next to it. I don't know if that
Really?
connects to what was happening with Sun Ra and the orchestra here in Chicago in general, but maybe.
Interesting.
But there's something about the park too, and that they had that divine, what you want to call, it was acknowledgement of the truth of what Sun Ra and what they were saying when that storm came out of nowhere. I think there were other events that happened like that too, here in Chicago and other places.
Yeah, I just reread that tonight. I'll have to look and see if I can find it from
Yeah.
you.
There's some other parts in there that are good because I have a bridged interview where Alton said he didn't want to exclude white people from the vision of Infinity Inc. or Saturn Research.
Right.
From the intergalactic standpoint, he mentioned.
Yep. Yeah, it's right here actually. So in extended play, John Corbett's interview with Alton Abraham, James Bryant was also present as well.
Yeah.
And John Corbett asks about papers that Alton was referring to, and those papers are actually the broadsheets that are collected in that book. I believe it's Sun Ra's Wisdom, but you had asked me to read one of those broadsheets last week. And Corbett asks, well, what kind of papers were those? And Alton answers, we used to type out information that we would research, put stencils in them and mimeograph them off and give them to people in our group. And somehow some of the newsmen got a hold of them. James Bryant says a lot of those groups were born from reading those papers. And Alton continues and talks about what you were just saying about the storm. Elijah Muhammad was around. I didn't know him. I was in my early teens, and they were doing what they were doing. We used to meet out in Washington Park. I used to live in half a block from Washington Park. We used to meet out on 54th and Washington Park near King Drive. We had our own tree that we used to stand by. People came to our tree. Meeting out in Washington Park, we became known as these crazy men, those guys from space. They make all kinds of noise. The Christians and Muslims were out there with some other group, and we had hundreds of people around us. The Christians and Muslims got together and started heckling us, talking about us. Ex-Congressman Gus Savage used to be in the crowd. He used to come out there. One day it was bright and sunny, not a cloud in the sky, very beautiful. We were talking and people were attacking us. How do you know we're going to go to the moon? How do you know so-and-so? We would answer the question, and then they would say, I guess next you call yourselves gods. I said, we are gods.
Our gods.
And we said, we're all gods. And that just made everybody angry. Then all of a sudden a windstorm came up. A cloud came out of nowhere. The sky turned black and the trees started to wind blowing through them. People got scared and took off. There's always been a power. I couldn't get away from this. It always made me come right back to it.
Yeah. Thank you. That's what I'm talking about right there.
Yep. So what's your sense from your research in the archives and just your feelings? So, the group that Alton was referring to there was basically the Thamay or Thamai. I still don't know how to pronounce it.
It's
Group
Thamay, I think
Thamay.
Thamay.
So
Thamay.
the goddess Thamay from ancient Egypt is what
Yeah.
the study research society group was called, and that included Alton Abraham, James Bryant, Sun Ra, or Ramadan, who then changed his name to Sun Ra.
Lawrence Allen was another member. Lawrence Allen. They say that he was the one who introduced Sun Ra to Alton. I tried to get in touch with him through his son, who's a percussionist, but I didn't have any luck. And then there was Louis Claren, who was Dimna Claren's father. There might have been other members that I don't know. Those are two members that I know were there. Or at times were there, probably.
So how much? So, what's your sense of Sun Ra? Obviously, is the persona as well as the being that we've all kind of come to know as the icon of the music and this way of thinking, these concepts. What, to your knowledge, what role did the larger group, play in formulating that vision and kind of that message?
Can you say that again? I'm sorry. Somebody was calling me and I was going to answer. It's funny. My friend Steve Glavman, who is also a researcher and has documented Sun Ra like through videos and audio, he was trying to call me. What were you at? Restate the question. Sorry.
So the question is Sun Ra is now the figurehead publicly for the music and the myth and the message. But from your research and your sense, how much did the rest of the Thamay group influence that originally, and how much input did they all have into it? Or was it really kind of directed off of Sun Ra's persona and the music?
I think there was an input for sure, but I can't. Sun Ra had his own idea, but they were searching also. So now I've heard people say that Alton was the one who created Sun Ra's persona. I think Alton just convinced Sun Ra to go ahead and do it publicly. Sun Ra was hesitant, but it was already Sun Ra's idea, but Alton was trying to convince him to do it because Sun Ra was kind of reticent because maybe he had that experience in the army where they tried to make him go in the army and all that. I don't think that Alton Abraham made Sun Ra, but he did have a lot to do with formulating in a lot of ways. That's the way I see it. Maybe it's a vision that the creator was giving them both, and James Bryant and whoever else.
And in your research, are there documents that kind of speak in more depth than the stuff that we've been able to see publicly in the books that have come out and interviews that explicitly kind of states what that idea, an embodiment of the creator is, like what culture, what systems of religion, philosophy, and thought that they were inspired by to kind of come up with their own amalgamation? Is there more information as far as how that was all synthesized in the archives?
I mean, a little bit, yes, but not. It's not fully documented. But there's lists of terms because they were always looking for correspondences, and Sun Ra did that with the equations,
Right.
like El, Elohim. There's a list of words. I wish I had it with me. Some are Hebrew words, some are other languages. I thought that was great. It was in Alton's handwriting. So. And there's
Interesting.
other equations. Colored equals dyed. D-Y-E-D equals D-I-E-D, which is death. So.
Yeah, in that John Corbett interview with Alton, Alton says, I think that he had a library of
Yeah.
15,000 books or something like that.
A lot of
Are
books. Some of them
any,
are in the archive, and some of them were moldy, and they were given to. Can't think of her name. She had an exhibit here at White Walls. Not White Walls. What was it called? It was an art exhibit, and this lady, she did a year of research here. She's from California, and she did an exhibit and used some of the books. But some of the books are in the. I haven't looked at the books as much as the paperwork are in Alton's collection. I don't know, maybe 50 books or more. Maybe John saved a few for himself. I don't know.
okay.
But there were some that were moldy because they had gotten wet, and they were in this person. I can't think of her name right now.
Not
She
not
made
Colleen,
films. Colleen.
Colleen Smith.
Colleen Smith. Yes, she did an exhibit. You can look it up online. There's some pictures of it, and it has a record player in the middle of the floor and books on the wall and some pictures. And it was
Yeah,
like the idea of the research.
yeah, and she put out a really fun, rare record as a part of that
Oh, the Black
exhibit.
Utopia, right?
Right.
Those are parts of Sun Ra rehearsing. Those are really good. There's some compositions on there that I don't know what they are. There's one da 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 da, and there's some things of Bill Coran talking. You made me think of 4115 South Drexel was the house that Alton had first when the Saturn Records was first started, and Anita Abraham, his niece, and other family, they lived at that house, so they remember Sun Ra when they were young. Obviously, they moved out of that house, and then Alton moved a couple other places later. That house still exists, 4115 South Drexel. I took a picture of it. I'll have to send it to you.
So is that the house that John Corbett refers to in the Vinyl Freak essay, or did Alton move somewhere else?
No. It was on Luella when that was a newer house. When Alton passed, it was sold by some family or somebody. And no, the 4115 South Drexel was Alton's maybe second house. And he grew up on 50th Street in another neighborhood near the parks when he was younger.
Now, did you ever get a chance to meet Alton?
No, I did not. I used to call the phone number 768-1390, and I would hear it said, "This is Saturn Research." It had some real weird music in the background. I left him a lot of messages. He knew my name because my name and phone number were in his notebooks.
Really?
A lot of people that I know or we know, their names were listed in the books. IA Atan, different people that have record companies. I mean, there's a ton of letters. There's boxes and boxes of letters that were sent to Saturn Research. Some were addressed to Sun Ra, some were addressed to him, some were just advertisements. Another thing Alton was trying to do was to get buy land in the western United States, which connects to the dreams that they wanted to have a Saturn Research Center and recording studio and hotels and some acres of land. He had a lot of ambitious plans that weren't able to be put into place. There were small things happened, but so hopefully the legacy will be people like us or people in the family that are younger, Alton's family or Sun Ra Orchestra members. It's their job to keep the legacy going.
Yep.
Everybody has a part to play. Sun Ra talked about it. He talked about the role, like ROLL in the Bible teaching. He's like, no, it's ROLE. What's your role in the drama of life or the universal plan?
Right. Yeah, and he said something similar to that in the Space is the Place film. We all have a part to play in the grand orchestra of life.
Cosmos, yes.
Right. So all of this research and listening and learning you do, you know, I mean, obviously we all love the music and you know, it could just be that for the joy and the insight, but are you working towards a project where you kind of share what you've learned and coalesce it into some kind of theme and put it out in some form?
I don't know yet. Book, possibly, but maybe there could be more. I haven't thought of it. Maybe some sort of a presentation. I could do it maybe at the University of Chicago. I suggested that to people there, that I do a presentation, my perspective of it. Maybe I'll do it at the ESS. The ESS has a recording studio. They have a great facility there. And they have a backyard where people, the guy I saw, Michael, what was his name? I don't know. He read some poems there. But, so yeah, maybe you're giving me some ideas. I haven't planned anything yet. But I have thought of the book idea, and people keep telling me you should write a book. Write a book. My friend Jimmy Ellis, he was playing with Sun Ra in the early 50s, and he was also a childhood friend of Alton Abraham. He was always telling me, write your book. You need to write a book. I have some people that are pushing me in that direction.
Now, Jimmy Ellis, are they still around?
No, Jimmy Ellis passed last year in 2021, I think. But I would see him. He was playing music up till the last couple of years before he died. Alto sax, and his brother had a big band, Morris Ellis, and
right.
Morris Sun Ra played in Morris Ellis's band in the early 50s.
Exactly. So that's where I know the name. There was an Ellis family in the area of musicians.
There was, and one of them owned a black bookstore, which I never saw, but I know about. And I believe Jimmy Ellis was involved in the May research, because there's a list of names. It doesn't say what the names are for, but I'm guessing it's people that were involved in some of those researches.
Right.
And Jimmy Ellis is in the list, and some of the musicians and some of Alton's family. So. And later on, Infinity Incorporated was founded, and it's currently still run by Anita Abraham. Her dad, which was Alton's oldest brother, he kind of took over Infinity Inc., and then she inherited it when he passed. It's kind of, you could call it like a satellite group, because they have a little different focus, but my vision is to see those things work together. The orchestra, Alton Abraham and Anita Abraham's family, and other people that are working or interested in those type subjects.
So is Anita Abraham out there in the public doing work under the Infinity name And if
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
what is she involved in, and what is she doing? Where can we find out about it?
yeah. Well, there's a website, but there's a Facebook pages, Infinity Inc.
Okay.
There's
And
a. I've sent you a link. I'm sure I did, but this for the audience. I guess they can look it up. But it's spelled IHNFINITY and then INC. She asked me to mention it anyways, but I was going to mention it on my own, but she asked me to mention it.
and what kind of work is she in the organization doing? Is it
It's going to
cultural? Is
be
it spiritual? Is it
emotion.
musical?
It's more like personal development, emotional coaching, and personal development, consciousness development, working with people that are having any kind of problems in their life and helping, advising. That's a long range goal. I'm not sure how much she's doing. She has some property in Costa Rica, so it might end up being like a retreat. Maybe that could be involved, and that could be something to connect with the dream of what Alton wanted to do.
Right. So all of the, I know that you still are involved in the community, and you go out and see music, and you talk to lots of people. What do you see as kind of the Sun Ra legacy in Chicago now? Like, how prevalent and well known and spoken of is Sun Ra kind of in music and art circles? Is he remembered and present by many, or is it more a select few? Like, what's the legacy in Chicago specifically?
I say many. There's people I meet on the L that know who he is, but of course the jazz musicians, especially in more creative music, they know him. They know his music. Some of their music sounds like his music. Yeah. We have the Elastic is a good club. We have Constellation run by Mike Reed. There's some other venues where they have creative music. Plus, there's the legacy of the AACM. It
Right.
wasn't founded by Sun Ra, but Bill Coran was a connection there because Bill played with Sun Ra 1959 through 60, and then he developed his own music. He didn't want to go. He didn't want to stay with Sun Ra. He wanted to play his music, but he was still influenced. He said Sun Ra was his biggest influence because it pushed him to do anything in music. So you could do anything in music. He said, Bill Cran said, one of the most important things that Sun Ra showed him is if you focus on one thing totally, that you'll accomplish it. So Bill Coran spent his life making music. He played harp, he played French horn, cornet, the francophone, which is the kalimba that he invented, electrified kalimba, and he played the violin uke, which is a stringed instrument. I love that cover right there.
Me too.
That cover I think was by James Bryan. It's on the back of Sound Sun Pleasure.
Some pleasure. Right. Yeah, I love this era, the artwork.
And that artwork right there is the original, is in the University of Chicago collection. We still don't know who did it. It says Evans.
Right. So the Jazz and Silhouette cover, I think, was attributed to H.B. Corbicero.
Now that was the That was the not mimeograph. What do you call that? I'm talking about the one with the ladies that are teleporting over the planet.
Right. Yeah.
That was the second. That was the second cover.
Yeah, Jazz and Silhouette.
Yeah, but it's not.
So
That's
you're
Evans.
talking about the one that's the wood cut or the linoleum cut, the orange and black screen printed one.
Yeah.
That's Sun Ra's artwork. Okay.
I think that the one with the ladies is Evans. The other one says H.B. Corbicero, and
Gotcha.
John Corbett thought that was Sun Ra. I wish I don't have them right here.
I had that mixed up. I always misunderstood that. So we've got a question in the chat. from North Scenic Route for you, and which is, and I've actually been thinking this myself. Do you know who did the Atlantis and Magic City covers? So I think Magic City was Sun Ra.
Yeah, maybe it could have been.
How about
And
Atlantis?
I'm not sure who did Atlantis.
Hmm.
I like it. There it is, right there. The one with the. You mean the Atlantis on Saturn, right?
Correct. Yeah, the one that's kind of a lotus shape with eyes in the petals, and it's blossoming
Right.
out from the.
I don't know. I don't know. One of my favorite covers is The Secrets of the Sun, which is Chris Hall.
Yeah, me too.
There's another artwork that was not used. I actually drew it out. It's online somewhere because they used it for an exhibit.
Was that in one of the Pathways to Unknown Worlds books?
No.
No. Okay.
It's online.
Yeah. So there you go, North Scenic Route. So I believe, and someone in the chat can correct me, but I believe Magic City was a Sunrod drawing, and Atlantis, Brad doesn't know. Maybe Sun Ra. I mean, I'm not sure, but great cover. And for those of you in the chat, North Scenic Route there, check out their channel. It's really great original music channel, and a couple pieces Sun Ra inspired. I checked it out. Good stuff. One more question for you, Brad, from Push Me Down.
Oh yeah, you know who that is? That's Thomas Stanley.
Yeah, it's Dr. Stanley.
Hey, that's my thing.
Shout out to Dr. Stanley.
Yes, Alter Destiny. We're making it happen.
Study your alter destiny. His question for you is: did Sun Ra and Dick Gregory ever cross paths in Chicago that you're aware of?
I think they did because Dick Gregory worked at the Robert Show Lounge, and Sun Ra was there on on Sundays playing for that social group called the Rounders. No squares allowed. I know that there's some mention of Dick Gregory in like a behind the scenes chat, and I think Sun Ra felt that Dick Gregory really didn't give him recognition.
Say that again. So, that Sun Ra felt Dick Gregory didn't give who recognition? Sun Ra?
Right.
For what? Recognition for what?
I don't know. You have to look in Thomas Stanley's book in the back in one of those interviews. I don't have it with me. I was going to bring that book. I brought a bunch of books.
Yeah, so North Scenic Route says that Dick Gregory did talk about Sun Ra, so we're going to all have to track those things down and put them in the chat or post them on social media. And for those of you that don't know who Dick Gregory is, Dick Gregory was an American comedian and civil rights activist who is a contemporary of Sun Ra, in his own right. Progressive figure from the era. So if you don't know who Dick Gregory is, definitely do a little research on his bio. Someone we should all know about.
Yeah, it's in that, the interviews that are in the back of Thomas Stanley's book, which I highly recommend it. It's called The Execution of Sun Ra.
The Execution.
And when people see the title, they're like, what? Execution? I'm like, it means to put it into action.
Right. And Dr.
there's
Stanley,
a picture of Ricky Murray. I was going to give him an honorable mention. His band that he was playing with, they're playing down the street from me right now in Hyde Park.
The band that Ricky Murray used to sing with?
Yes, they're called the New Orleans Mudcats. They're performing right now. I was in there, but it's too noisy in there. I mean, it's noisy in here, but you guys can hear me, right?
We can hear you and everything that's going on around you.
Yeah, they're just playing music. So I'm in the Starbucks, so maybe I should have went somewhere else. I'm right in Hyde Park. There it is.
Nice.
I love that video collage that you have. Every time I see it, it's so well done and has some of my favorite pictures.
Yeah,
of Sun
I just adore the artwork.
Yes.
Dr. Thomas Stanley, if you could put a link in the chat so that people that are interested in finding, buying, and reading your book, please include that in there.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
I know that you're not. It's available directly from you now. So
Another good book there.
yeah, Pure Solar World by Paul Youngquist, which is that's the Wisdom of Sun Ra, right? I can't read it. That's the broad.
It is, yeah. Don't give up.
So, Brad, anything else from a Chicago Sun Ra standpoint that you really want to communicate and talk about that we didn't touch on yet?
What about the musicians? I mean, he attracted such great musicians. Some of the best musicians I've ever heard. Art Hoyle, Julian Priester, who I saw a couple times. James Scales, alto, great musician. Robert Berry, I've met him and seen him play a lot. Who else is there? Pat Patrick. That's a whole. We'll have to do a discussion about Pat too.
One of the greatest.
There's stories about him that he was the one that gave broadsides to Coltrane, and that pushed Coltrane out of his addictive behaviors and to try new forms of music. So there's a story that they went to the Sutherland because there was some Miles was playing with Coltrane there, and then they went up to the hotel room, Pat, Patrick, Sun Ra, Alton Abraham, maybe some other people, and they were showing Pat some stuff, some styles, and that just blew his mind. It changed his approach.
It did, yeah, like around 56, and you can hear it in the recordings.
Right, it changed right after that. Thank you for verifying that.
Right, and it would be interesting. I mean, we'll never know it probably at this point because Coltrane never really explicitly talked about the Sun Ra connection and influence. It would be interesting to know, in addition to Sun Ra, the solar precepts, what else was happening in his life that kind of culminated in that huge evolution in 56. And actually, I was thinking the same thing about Sun Ra today. What other than moving to New York, what other things contributed to the major evolution in his music and sound as we've heard it recorded in the year 1962?
But he was forming
tomorrow. I mean, it's just like you get the Chicago recordings, then you get futuristic sounds in 61 from Newark, and then all of a sudden, like, it's not music of this planet at all anymore.
Wow. Well, there are some hints to it in the Chicago stuff, especially if you listen to those organ and keyboard rehearsals, the stuff that's on the Eternal Myth Revealed. There's some real haunting, weird sounds that were made. Maybe some of them were in the 40s.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Dr. Frank Adams talked about that in Birmingham, Sun Ra was already playing some really weird chords. Already, it wasn't as well developed, but he was already tuned into something else, but it was subtle. But I think it has something to do with the African thing. He was just feeling it. And that's why Sun Ra stressed those big bands. He said the big bands were a natural creation of love, unfettered avant-garde. I wish I had that quote, but when I read that, I started, so I got to listen to these big bands. And I would hear the harmonies in there and the Fletcher Henderson or different big bands from the 30s, 40s. They had something in their harmonies that was special, and it came from the Black experience.
Right. Yeah, and transcendent. It'd be interesting to think and talk about that a little bit more as far as the avant-garde and what what avant-garde actually means and is.
Right. Maybe we can do a part 2 to this discussion, because I know we won't cover everything I really would like to cover.
But I think you raise a great point, right? So I mean, the avant-garde, we kind of think of it, or history thinks of it, as happening in the 60s, but really the avant-garde is a reaction to a time and a place in sound. So Sun Ra referring to Fletcher Henderson and the swing groups and their harmonic and rhythmic approach as being avant-garde kind of means that avant-garde is more a frame of mind and a reflection of the world than it is a particular specific sound.
Yeah.
So yeah, you just made me think about that. So the musicians of Chicago that intersected with Sun Ra, any thoughts and experiences with Phil Coran?
Well, yeah, I liked hearing him. I used to go see him every week almost. But he was saying that his music was consonant and Sun Ra's was dissonant. Sun Ra would put notes close together to create a little bit of an off sound. Von Freeman also mentioned that he's like, Sun Ra sounded like he wasn't playing right, but he was. It was just a certain way of voicing the chords. Yeah, Phil Coran had a lot of knowledge. Maybe we'll do a show about his connection. There's a story about when he found that instrument on 63rd Street, the violin uke, the little thing that he bows and he plucks. You've seen it, right? He said the next day there was a fire in the place, so it was like he was synchronistic that he was able to get it. It's like Sun Ra dealt with synchronicities. It was like, if you're in tune, then the universe will provide you with things. I was talking to Adam Abraham, Alton's oldest son, today, and he was talking about that, about the universe has endless possibilities. Like Sun Ra said, try to do the impossible. The possibility has been tried and has failed. Now we got to do the impossible.
So what is Adam Abraham doing these days?
Oh yeah, he has his own things. He's doing a blog. He sells photonic water devices. He's also involved in cryptocurrency. Me and him were talking about that today. So I don't know the details. I'll have to send you a link about it, because if you want to get involved, he's looking for people to get involved.
Honestly, crypto's just way beyond my conception.
And there's James, is the younger son of Alton. He wants to reissue all albums, so maybe he'll do that. I'm not sure. So he was doing hip hop music. James Stubbs Abraham. It's Jay Goldie on social media. So.
And what is it that they want to reissue?
Sun Ra albums. He feels that his dad gave him Saturn Records, so maybe they could develop a new Saturn Records. So, yeah. I don't know. We'll see. Future holds some possibilities to come to fruition. But I like my favorite label currently is Cosmic Myths. I usually buy their releases. It seems like that's the most Saturn-like record label going right now. So I know they got Modern Harmonic and Strut, Art Yard. The Cosmic Myth releases have the most, they represent Sun Ra's music the best to me. There's also the new orchestra releases. Highly recommend those too.
Yeah. Cosmic Myth seems to be really kind of focusing on kind of canon must-hear recordings. Like
Right.
if you were gonna hear a handful of Sun Ra records, what would the most important handful be?
Yeah.
Yeah, and as far as the current orchestra, um, reiterate again, that they're still out there, still playing. They've got a show coming up in New Jersey that I mentioned at the top of the show. So go online, go on social, and buy your tickets and support Marshall Allen directing
Yeah.
the orchestra, because they're keeping it alive and keeping it growing.
They are. Yep. Thank you. How many people are in the chat? I can't see it while I'm on here.
So we've got 9 people
Oh,
right
good.
now. Yep. Yep. We'll kind of we'll do a shout out to everybody. We've got brother Charles Blass in the house. We've
All
got
right.
Dr. Thomas Stanley. We've got brother Steve Antonelli. We've got forgive me if I pronounce this wrong, but Maha Rios.
Oh, that's Maja Rios. That's my
Rios.
friend. She's a singer, and she was married to bebop Sam Thomas.
Oh,
the
really?
guitarist from the 50s,
Nice.
and he was playing in the 80s.
Welcome, Maja. Thank you for being here. We've got Miss Me in the chat as well. And we've got North Scenic Route. So that's our group of 9 for tonight.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, people can watch this later and chime in on any suggestions.
Yeah.
Advise people, please support the orchestra. Please come to the concerts. I just saw them in Madison, Wisconsin. Marshall wasn't there, but it was still a good show. Noel Scott did a good job of conducting. I really give it to him for what he did with that at that concert. It was pretty good. So, yep.
Yep, Marshall does a great job.
Oh yeah, Marshall's amazing. I mean, he makes the band sound like Sun Ra's still alive. They're conducting from a distance.
Right, and Marshall brings his own personality and tone and flavor to it. It's certainly an evolution. There's a certain sweetness. There's a sweet and sour aspect to Marshall's playing that he brings to the music. That's really an evolution and the next step. And Bushmeat says repost the details for that New Jersey show, and I've closed out my window, so either scroll back to the beginning of the broadcast for that New Jersey upcoming show for the orchestra, or go online and get your tickets and check them out.
Right. I think it's next Saturday.
Yeah, it's coming up soon.
I was also going to plug Lorana Phipps Ray. She's married to Michael Ray, and she has a new album. Her group is called La Funkalicious. It's called Jazz Crime, so she calls it, and I call it too, the Satellites of Sun Ra. Sun Ra's Angels. Lorana, thank you. She's a real nice person. Well, I've been talking to her online, and we chat a little bit. I saw her at a couple of shows. Also, Lauren Putty White, she's doing the dancing now. When they're on the East Coast, Lauren does the dancing. She's like on the level of Judith Mendez or Cheryl Banks Smith. We're closing at this place here, so maybe we should wrap it up.
Yeah, I think we've covered quite a bit. Brad, I really appreciate you making the time and joining us to talk Sun Ra tonight. It's a pleasure and an honor.
Maja Rios is a little write-up about Maja Rios' group, Spaceship Love. It was her and bebop Sam Thomas she was married to. So. And Maja dresses as an orchestra member unofficially. So. Here I can show you something else. Look at this picture.
I see Jackson.
Yep, it's Jackson and Elo and John Gilmore. This was given to me by Steve Gladman.
Nice.
He may be listening. He called me while we were talking, and I guess I could have answered, but then the signal might have got cut off.
Well, please say hello for us, and if Steve ever wants to join the conversation, please bring him along.
I want him to, so maybe I'll go over. Well, me and him will meet up, and then we could, because he doesn't have the cell phone thing. He could probably do it on his computer. I don't know.
So Brad, as our final thought before you go and they close up shop there, just make sure that we mention the mighty John Gilmore. Any experiences or thoughts about John to leave us with before we go?
Yeah, it's just that he knew all these people. In his interview, he talked about a community center, and they had all these tenor players that were really good, and a lot of them ended up dying because they had drug problems. He mentioned John Neely, and I don't know, he mentioned a bunch of people, and he mentioned Ike Day was a great drummer. People came from all over the United States to see this man play drums, but he had a drug problem. So. Yeah, I like John Gilmore. He was at DuSable High School under the direction of Captain Walter Diet.
Right. And that's a whole other thing about the Chicago history that we didn't even touch on.
Oh, well, we're talking about now. Jimmy Ellis was one of Captain Diet's close friends, so he always mentioned this. He mentioned this in a talk. He said, Captain Diet said, he can who thinks he can. So if you think you can do it, the power of the mind is it's amazing. So I'm gonna leave you guys with this picture. That's Bugs Cochran and Ricky Murray.
Beautiful. Well, another time we'll talk about Ricky Murray and DuSable and Walter Diet and John Gilmore, and there's so many things to talk about when it comes to Chicago and Sun Ra and you, Brad.
Yes.
Thank you so
shout
much,
out to any orchestra members that might be watching. My friend Cecil Brooks has turned out to be one of my favorite people, best friends. Noel Scott's always there. Dave Hotep, Dave Davis. He knows a lot about jazz history. He wants to know more stuff. So
he's a super sweet cat.
Tara,
very, very nice dude.
Tara's taken over June's spot real well. Wayne on drums. There's a bunch of people, and Elson for really holding down the management. And
the orchestra's angel.
And then Danny Ray Thompson Pico. All right, I'm gonna sign off.
All right, peace. Take care, everyone. Space is the place.
Space is the place. Space is the place. Space is the place. Yeah.
Space.
Shout out to Akhtal Iba too. He was the one singing that. Ooh, yeah.
Oh, great voice.
Okay.
All right, it's after the end of the world.
Don't you know that yet?
Night.
Night.